Okay, what I want to show you guys right now is how to go ahead and access Adobe Illustrator and how to use the pen tool to go ahead and get your logo into a digital version. Now the first thing that you will have to do before even getting to Illustrator is you will have to take a camera, photograph your sketch. This would be the sketch that's on the graph paper. And then go ahead and insert that memory card into the computer and download that image onto your X drive. Once you have the image of your sketch saved on your X drive, you'll then be able to go ahead and start this process. So to access Illustrator, the easiest way is to go to Start menu, go ahead and type IL into the search. You will notice that two versions are going to pop up. You're going to want to go ahead and click the 64-bit version. And once this loads here, you are going to want to go ahead and open up that image that you have photographed. So we're going to go to File, we're going to go to Open, and then I'm going to go ahead and access my X drive here. I believe I have it under My Examples, and here we go, Logo 1. So this is my logo, and I'm going to go ahead and move this guy. This is my logo that I have scanned in. Now this document that I'm working on, I haven't actually defined the size of it, so we're going to have to move this over to a blank document. So the next thing we're going to do is go to File, and then New. And we're going to make a blank page that we're going to transfer that logo over to. Now, Adobe Illustrator, although very similar to Photoshop, there are a few differences, one of which is right here you'll notice that the width and height is actually set in the units of points. Now, points and picas are very common with illustration, but we won't even get into that. We're just going to go ahead and change this over to inches. And then, as you can see, it changed to inches right here. Now, the measurements that you're going to enter in here are going to be the same measurements for the size of graph paper that you drew your sketch on. So I know that I drew my sketch on a 4" by 4" sheet of graph paper, so I'm going to enter those dimensions in right here. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit OK. So just like in Photoshop, each of your files are going to be up here at the top. I'm going to go ahead and click back to my logo. And I'm going to click on my logo and I'm going to drag it over to my blank 4" by 4" screen. Now to go over some of the other differences with Illustrator first off, you'll notice that if I were to drag my logo outside this black box, it's still going to show me where my logo is. Now in Photoshop you wouldn't be able to see this area over here, but in Illustrator it does show you. Now keep in mind, anything outside of this black box will not print. It's going to show you on the computer, but it will not print. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to resize that image to make it fit into my 4" by 4" box. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make it just about as big as possible, leaving a small border around the edges there. Now as you can see, the actual Illustrator program is set up very similar to Photoshop, with all of your menu options here at the top, all of your tools over here on the left, and then your layers is somewhat hidden, but it is going to be here in the bottom right section, and you do have to open that, click it to open it to access your different layers. I'm going to go ahead and leave that closed for right now and talk about the few tools that we're going to use. Now, we're only going to be touching on 3 different tools. One, which is the main tool, is the pen tool right here. We're going to talk a little bit about this direct selection tool, and then very briefly on our shape tool here. But what I want to do is I want to go ahead and start with our pen tool. Now, with the pen tool selected, this is going to be the main tool for creating your outlines. Before I even go ahead and start with that, I want to touch base here with your color options. There's two options here. One is fill and one is stroke. Stroke is your border for any shape that you're going to create. And when I'm starting, I'm going to go ahead and switch those to make sure that my fill is empty and then my border is black. And you'll see why this is important in a second here. Now, to go ahead and to create a shape with the pen tool, you have to set anchor points by clicking the mouse. So I'm going to go ahead and just, in this open corner here, go ahead and click, and you'll notice that I've set that anchor point. Now, let's just say I want to make a triangle. I'm going to go ahead and move my cursor, click again once. Now notice that that has connected those two anchor points and created a path. I'm going to come back over here. The computer's already going to help me out a whole lot and inform me where the right angle is at. So say I did want a right angle triangle, I can go ahead and align that, click once more. It's going to automatically connect those 2 points. And then to close that shape, I'm going to bring it right back up to my first anchor point that I created. Now, do notice that when I align it perfectly on there, the little circle appears right next to my tool. This circle signifies that I'm going to close that shape. If I were to click slightly off, notice that there's no circle, and again, that would not actually close the shape. So I'm going to go ahead and click once that circle appears. I now have created this triangular shape. I can go ahead and I can move that shape around. Right now, there is no thickness to my border, because if we come up here to our tool options, you will notice that my stroke is set to 0. So this right here is how you change your border thickness. If I were to go ahead and start moving this up, 2, 3, 4, you can see that the triangle and its border are now getting significantly thicker. And of course, if I wanted to change that color, I can just double click on my border color, say change that over here to this blue-gray color, and you notice that that has then changed. And of course, I can change the inside as well, say to a red, and you notice that that is going to change the inside of my shape to a red. Now I'm going to go ahead and change this back to just to black and white. So now we have this perfect triangle. Let's just say that I made this triangle, but instead of being a right triangle, I wanted to move this anchor point here at the top. So to move any of these individual corners or any individual points, that's where you're going to use the direct selection tool. I'm going to go ahead and click this selection tool. I'm going to come back down here. I'm going to click once on my anchor point, and then I'm going to click and drag. And so now I have the full option to move this anchor point around anywhere that I want. I can make this triangle dance back and forth. Oops, I moved my background. Make this guy dance back and forth. And I can, of course, move any of my other anchor points as well. So this is more what I'm looking for, let's just say. But as I look at it more, I decide, oh, I want to make this a square. Well, to make it a square, squares do have 4 corners, so I'm going to have to add an anchor point to one of my lines. To add an anchor point, that is going to be found underneath your pen tool. So if you click and hold on the pen tool, you will see multiple options, add and delete. So of course we can delete anchor points. I'm going to show you how to add one. We're going to click the add anchor point. I'm going to come back down to my path, and I'm going to go ahead and click right there on the path, and notice that an anchor point did appear. This will be easier for you guys to see. I've got that anchor point right there. Again, to move that anchor point, I'm going to go ahead and go to my direct selection tool, click on the anchor point, and then I can drag it. Now also do note that when I brought this over to that right angle, the computer has snapped and it has brought that to a perfect right angle. And I can do the same thing over here. It's gonna, once I get it close enough, it's going to show me, there we go, snapped, and then snap. So I've now transformed that triangle into a rectangle. So the last thing that I want to show you with this shape is how to curve your corners or your points. Because I know some of you are going to have curves in your logo and in your designs. So to go ahead and curve a corner, you're going to want to come back to your pen tool and select this bottom option here, which is Convert Anchor Point tool. Now you do have to click directly on an anchor point. It cannot be on the path itself. But when I go ahead and click this anchor point, I'm going to click and then I'm going to drag. So I'm going to click and drag, and you're going to notice that those two blue lines are showing me where that curve is going to be. Now if I were to click and drag left, I've clicked and dragged the wrong direction, and those lines have crossed each other. Now maybe that's something you want for your design, but odds are you're going to want to avoid that within your design. Now let's just say I want to curve that straight up. I'm just going to click and drag straight down, and I've now gone ahead and I've curved that edge right there. And if I want to do the same thing to this side, I'm going to click, and then I'm going to drag. Oops, I have dragged the wrong way. I'm going to drag up, and bring that right to about there. Now I went ahead and I eyeballed where both of those points were, but of course if I wanted this to be a perfect circle, each of these handles and endpoints need to be on the same horizontal line. Now just like in Photoshop, if I want to get a guideline in place, I need to first go ahead and have my rulers visible. So I'm going to go to View, and then Rulers, and then Show Rulers. So now I have access to those rulers. And again, to create that guideline, what you do is you click on the ruler and drag down, and I can line that up to my anchor points, and you guys should be very impressed because both of those handles are directly on that line. So this circle is a perfect, well, I should say half circle right on the top. I'm actually even impressed that I got those that close. But let's just say that one of these was a little bit off, and it is going to now look a little bit kind of wonky there. I would be able to go ahead and click that handle and drag that straight up, and the computer again is going to snap to that guideline, and it's going to show me that it is intersecting right there. And I have gone ahead and created that, I don't know, kind of like a piece of bread, I guess would be a way to describe that. Now, a much easier way to go ahead and create a perfect square, perfect rectangle, or perfect circle is to use our shape tool. I'm going to go ahead and delete this guy and show you this shape tool here. So with our shape tool, if you click and hold, it's going to give you multiple options. With a rectangle tool, I can go ahead and click free form, click and drag. If I hold my shift key, it's going to limit me to a square, like so. If I go ahead and use my ellipse tool, this is how you're going to create a circle. But of course it's going to freeform ellipse, and if I want a perfect circle, again I hold my shift key, and it is now going to keep it constrained within a perfect circle. Now let's say I start with my circle, and for many of you that have water droplets or teardrops or things like that, this is a great way to start, because after you've created that circle, you can then go ahead and go back into these individual small anchor points with my direct selection tool. I can click, and I can go ahead and I can move. And now I have, actually, this is a pretty good egg shape like that. But let's say I want that teardrop. To create a teardrop, we will note that the top anchor point should be pointed, not curved. So we do know how to do that. I need to convert that top anchor point to a point instead of a curve. So I'm just going to go ahead and click my convert, and then I'm going to click, just click, no drag, and I've now gone ahead and converted that to a point at the top and then that perfect circle on the bottom. So of course I could have attempted to draw this, but what I need to do instead to make it a whole lot easier is go ahead and just use that shape tool rather than freeform. So I want to take a moment right now to go ahead and show you how I can convert my actual logo right here. So I'm going to delete this guy out and bring us back to this screen. So now I have straight edges right here. So I am going to just use my pen tool, and this will actually be very quick when I'm starting. Remember to set those settings back here to an empty fill and then just a solid stroke. So when I'm clicking and moving, I do want this to be perfectly horizontal. The computer again is going to show me exactly where that's perfectly horizontal, but you can also hold that shift key, and that's going to guarantee that it is a perfectly horizontal, or in this case right here, a perfectly vertical line. So I'm going to continue going all the way around. And I do want to make sure that I'm getting pretty close to my anchor points. And again, this is when I stressed earlier, when you're creating your logo on the graph paper, the more precise you are on the graph paper, the easier this will be, because my lines will already be straight, they'll already be matched up, and I won't have to do a whole lot of adjustments afterwards. Again, closing the shape, that little circle has appeared, and that's going to signify that it's closed. I've got this guy ready to go. Once you have the main outline done on your logo, I recommend going back to your layers and then finding your image and hiding it, because you have no need for that anymore and you don't want it to interfere with the logo. And you can now see what this looks like on the digital version without any sketch lines behind it. So come back here. So I've got that basic outline of my logo. There are a handful of sections, though, that it looks like I perhaps mismeasured, or I need to adjust to make them perfectly aligned. And I'm going to go ahead and start with these two anchor points right here. I'm going to zoom in, and this again is your magnifying glass tool. I'm going to zoom into this section. And let's say that I want to go ahead and make this anchor point and this anchor point on the same vertical line. Well, that's pretty easy if I bring in a guideline. So I'm going to click on my left ruler, drag over, and we'll notice that this one is just a little bit off, but all I need to do is click that, drag that over, and now it is perfectly aligned with that guideline right there. And of course I'm going to want to do the same thing with these 2 points. So click and drag, and then I can adjust and bring this guy right over. I can make my way through my document over on the right hand side and aligning all of these anchor points. Hey, look at that, I got all those perfectly aligned. Again, you guys should be impressed. And we're going to come back and do these two. Yep, wasn't so good with those ones, but quick and easy. Line that guy up. Now for any of the horizontal anchor points, like these two I can see are off, and perhaps I want to align those two, I would go ahead and click on my top ruler, drag down that guideline, and then I'm going to be able to adjust that guy, and actually I'm probably going to adjust this guy right there as well. Those are all good to go. And I would again make my way through the rest of my document to go ahead and clean this up. But I'm not going to go through this completely right now for time's sake. But when I'm done getting all of those perfected, odds are I'm going to have a lot of these guidelines all over the place, and they're going to kind of visually get in the way. So just like our rulers, to hide those temporarily, I'm going to come up to View, and then down here, where are we at? I lost them. There we go, Guides. You can hide your guides, which is going to temporarily make them invisible, but you can always bring them back. You can go ahead and clear your guides if you know you're not going to use them anymore. I'm just going to go ahead and hide them right now in case I want to bring any of those back in to check on things. And I do recommend hiding them in the event that you do need them again for your document. So at this point I would be able to start actually playing around with some of the finite specifics with my logo, such as the color on the inside, and then of course the thickness, my stroke. Definitely wouldn't want to go that thick. But let's say when I have it in here, I want to go ahead and create a curve, maybe on this top part right here. I know this is not going to look good, but this is the last thing that I want to go over with you guys. So I've created this portion right here. I don't have access to my circle tool because I already have a straight line. So I am going to need to start playing around with these anchor points. Now when you're making a circle, and when we looked at this circle from earlier, when we created it, you notice that there are 4 anchor points. Or on any curve section, the only anchor point that you want is on the actual apex of that circle. And so I've got one here on the apex, one here on this apex, one right here, one right here. Now technically, yes, every single little minute point here is an apex. But I'll show you here on this circle where the one and singular apex is going to be. And that's the only place you want to put an anchor point. A lot of students tend to overdo it with the anchor points, and with this, less is more. Just like your logo being simple, less is more with your anchor points. So this is where I need to add an anchor point, and you'll see why. I'm going to bring one right here in the middle. I'm then going to move this up again. Now, of course, it's a triangle right now, But as you recall, to go ahead and change that into a circle, I'm going to convert, I'm going to click, I'm going to drag, and then I'm able to adjust that top portion to give me the required curve that I want right there. And of course you guys are looking at this going, that is an awful curve for this logo, and I would agree. But again, that's just to show you how to go ahead and add in that curve. So that is the quick run through on how to go ahead and use that pen tool. I recommend starting on a blank document and just kind of fooling around, playing around, and getting familiar with these tools before you go ahead and start on your actual logo creation. Hopefully this helps you guys get through this, but of course I will be here to help you with any of the specifics with your logo, because there are more things that we can do in this program.